The branch circuit wiring for a fire alarm air compressor must be independent of other wiring. This requirement exists to ensure the reliability and functionality of the fire alarm system. A fire alarm system is a critical life safety system, and its operation must not be compromised by failures or issues in other electrical circuits. Connecting the fire alarm air compressor to a dedicated circuit minimizes the risk of interference or disruption from other electrical loads. If the air compressor shares the circuit with other equipment, a fault or overload in that other equipment could potentially trip the breaker, shutting down the compressor and rendering the fire alarm system ineffective. A dedicated circuit provides a direct and uninterrupted power supply to the fire alarm air compressor. This means that the circuit breaker or fuse protecting the circuit only serves the compressor, and no other electrical loads are connected to it. This isolation ensures that the compressor receives the power it needs to operate reliably, even if other circuits in the building experience problems. The National Electrical Code, or NEC, contains specific requirements for fire alarm systems, including the need for dedicated circuits for certain components. These requirements are designed to enhance the safety and reliability of these systems. The specific NEC articles that cover fire alarm systems include Article 760, which focuses on fire alarm systems in general, and other relevant articles that address wiring methods, overcurrent protection, and grounding. The requirements for independent circuits for fire alarm systems are rooted in the fundamental principles of electrical safety and reliability. Fire alarm systems must operate dependably during emergencies, and any factor that could compromise their performance must be minimized. By providing a dedicated circuit for the fire alarm air compressor, the risk of electrical interference, voltage drops, or circuit overloads is significantly reduced. This approach helps to ensure that the compressor receives the correct voltage and current to operate correctly. Several reasons underscore the need for dedicated circuits for fire alarm air compressors. Firstly, it minimizes the risk of electrical interference. Sharing a circuit with other equipment can introduce electrical noise or voltage fluctuations that could disrupt the compressor's operation. Secondly, it prevents circuit overloads. If the compressor shares a circuit with other high-demand equipment, the circuit breaker could trip due to excessive current draw. Thirdly, it ensures consistent power supply. Dedicated circuits provide a stable and reliable power source, free from the variations that could occur when a circuit is shared with other loads. When installing a dedicated circuit for a fire alarm air compressor, several key steps must be followed. Firstly, identify the correct circuit breaker in the electrical panel. This breaker should be dedicated solely to the fire alarm air compressor. Secondly, run a separate electrical cable from the breaker to the location of the compressor. The cable should be of the appropriate gauge and type for the load requirements of the compressor. Thirdly, connect the cable to a dedicated electrical outlet or junction box near the compressor. Ensure that all connections are secure and properly insulated. Fourthly, test the circuit to verify that it is functioning correctly. Use a multimeter to check the voltage and current at the outlet. There are several potential consequences of not providing a dedicated circuit for a fire alarm air compressor. Firstly, the compressor may not operate reliably, leading to potential failures during emergencies. Secondly, the fire alarm system may not meet the requirements of the electrical code, resulting in violations and penalties. Thirdly, the safety of the building occupants may be compromised, as the fire alarm system may not function as intended. The National Fire Protection Association, or NFPA, also publishes standards and guidelines related to fire alarm systems. These standards, such as NFPA 72, provide detailed requirements for the installation, testing, and maintenance of fire alarm systems. Adhering to these standards is essential for ensuring the safety and reliability of the system. To maintain the integrity of the dedicated circuit, regular inspections and testing are necessary. Firstly, visually inspect the wiring and connections for any signs of damage or deterioration. Secondly, test the circuit breaker to ensure that it is functioning correctly. Thirdly, measure the voltage and current at the outlet to verify that they are within acceptable limits. Fourthly, document all inspections and tests, and keep records readily available for review. The selection of the appropriate wire gauge for the dedicated circuit is critical. The wire gauge must be sized to handle the maximum current draw of the fire alarm air compressor. The NEC provides tables and guidelines for determining the appropriate wire gauge based on the amperage rating of the circuit breaker and the length of the wire run. Using an undersized wire gauge can result in overheating and potential fire hazards. Overcurrent protection is another essential aspect of the dedicated circuit. The circuit breaker or fuse protecting the circuit must be sized appropriately to protect the wiring and equipment from overloads and short circuits. The NEC provides guidelines for selecting the correct overcurrent protection device based on the amperage rating of the circuit and the type of equipment being protected. Using an oversized overcurrent protection device can allow excessive current to flow through the circuit, potentially causing damage to the wiring and equipment. The grounding of the dedicated circuit is also important for safety. The grounding system provides a path for fault current to flow back to the source, tripping the circuit breaker and preventing electrical shock hazards. The NEC provides detailed requirements for grounding electrical systems, including the size and type of grounding conductors. In summary, providing a dedicated circuit for a fire alarm air compressor is essential for ensuring the reliability and safety of the fire alarm system. It minimizes the risk of interference, overloads, and voltage drops, and helps to ensure that the compressor receives the power it needs to operate correctly during emergencies. Adhering to the requirements of the NEC and other relevant standards is critical for meeting safety regulations and ensuring the proper functioning of the fire alarm system. Regular inspections and testing are also necessary to maintain the integrity of the dedicated circuit. By following these guidelines, the building owner can ensure that the fire alarm system is functioning correctly and that the building occupants are protected in the event of a fire. It is important to note that the requirements for fire alarm systems can vary depending on the specific application and the local electrical code. Therefore, it is essential to consult with a qualified electrical contractor or engineer to ensure that the installation meets all applicable requirements. Firstly, it is important to consult with a qualified electrical contractor or engineer to determine the specific requirements for the fire alarm system in the building. Secondly, review the relevant articles of the National Electrical Code, or NEC, to understand the requirements for dedicated circuits and overcurrent protection. Thirdly, select the appropriate wire gauge and overcurrent protection device for the dedicated circuit based on the amperage rating of the fire alarm air compressor. Fourthly, install the dedicated circuit in accordance with the NEC and any applicable local codes. Fifthly, test the circuit to verify that it is functioning correctly and that it meets all applicable requirements. Sixthly, document all inspections and tests, and keep records readily available for review. Seventhly, establish a schedule for regular inspections and tests to maintain the integrity of the dedicated circuit. Eighthly, train building personnel on the importance of the dedicated circuit and the potential consequences of tampering with it. Ninthly, ensure that the fire alarm system is properly maintained and tested in accordance with the requirements of the NFPA 72. Tenthly, stay up to date on the latest changes to the NEC and other relevant codes and standards. There are several types of fire alarm systems, each with its own specific requirements. These systems can range from simple single-zone systems to complex multi-zone systems with advanced features such as voice evacuation and smoke control. The type of system will affect the requirements for the dedicated circuit for the fire alarm air compressor. In some cases, the dedicated circuit may need to be monitored to ensure that it is functioning correctly. This can be accomplished by connecting the circuit to the fire alarm control panel, which can provide an alarm if the circuit fails. The fire alarm control panel is the central component of the fire alarm system. It monitors the various devices in the system such as smoke detectors, heat detectors, and manual pull stations, and initiates an alarm if a fire is detected. The control panel also provides annunciation and control functions for the system. The power supply for the fire alarm control panel is another critical aspect of the system. The control panel must have a reliable power supply to ensure that it can operate correctly during emergencies. In most cases, the control panel will have both a primary power supply, which is typically derived from the building's electrical system, and a secondary power supply, which is typically a battery backup system. The secondary power supply is designed to provide power to the control panel in the event of a power outage. The batteries must be sized to provide sufficient power to operate the control panel and all of the connected devices for a specified period of time. The NEC and NFPA 72 provide detailed requirements for the sizing and maintenance of the batteries. The fire alarm air compressor is used to provide compressed air to the fire sprinkler system. The compressed air is used to maintain the water pressure in the sprinkler system and to activate the sprinkler heads in the event of a fire. The air compressor is typically located in a mechanical room or other enclosed space. The location of the compressor can affect the requirements for the dedicated circuit. For example, if the compressor is located in a hazardous location, the wiring must be installed in accordance with the requirements of the NEC for hazardous locations. The NEC defines hazardous locations as areas where flammable gases, vapors, or dusts are present. These locations require special wiring methods and equipment to prevent explosions and fires. The selection of the appropriate wiring method for the dedicated circuit is also important. The wiring method must be suitable for the environment in which it is installed and must be able to withstand the expected mechanical stresses. The NEC provides detailed requirements for wiring methods, including the type of conduit, cable, and fittings that can be used. The dedicated circuit for the fire alarm air compressor must be clearly identified. This can be accomplished by labeling the circuit breaker in the electrical panel and by marking the wiring with the permanent tag. The labeling and marking must be legible and durable. The building owner is responsible for ensuring that the fire alarm system is properly maintained and tested. This includes regular inspections, testing, and maintenance of the dedicated circuit for the fire alarm air compressor. The building owner should keep records of all inspections, tests, and maintenance activities. These records should be readily available for review by the fire marshal or other authorities. The fire marshal is responsible for enforcing the fire codes in the building. The fire marshal may conduct inspections of the fire alarm system to ensure that it meets all applicable requirements. If the fire marshal finds any violations, the building owner will be required to correct them.